I already hosted a couple of sessions. The first one being focused more on why risk strategy starts with trust, and the last one being around leadership blind spots. Today we are going to get into the next step, which is what happens once people start speaking up. It's a typical, I would say, topic. In fact, I'm currently working with an organization where the aspect around risk culture and speak up and tone from the top is pretty much front and center in addressing some of the issues they're seeing in risk management and beyond. So really, really relevant, I think, across many organizations and probably more to come. In terms of housekeeping, I will set the scene for perhaps 3-4 minutes. This is so the third of 4 events. The next one is planned around, and the last one planned around mid-December. You can ask questions via the Q&A function or in the chat. If I don't answer immediately, or if we don't have time to cover all the questions, I will come back to it offline, as I've done in the previous events. The event is recorded and will be made available beginning of next week. You will also have access to kind of the transcript and the core question that were covered. I will also share with you some takeaways on the back of the event in the thank you note. I will be running a couple of poll surveys depending on the number of participants today. I will also share a lot of information I've been gathering ahead of the call today. And that's going to support the discussion we're going to have. You can clearly find more information in my book, The Risk Within. You can find the QR code here. If you haven't accessed it before, if you're a member of GARP or a member of risk.net, you can get it with a discount or access it, I think, online. I will also ask you to provide some feedback, anonymous feedback at the end of the webinar. It helps me structure the event and improve. So each time I'm receiving feedback, I'm trying to embed some of them. In fact, today I'm going to make a couple of tweaks around that based on discussion I had last time. And finally, for those interested, I will be running a CPD masterclass on the topic starting on the 10th of February next year. You can find more information on the website, and I will also share some information as well via email. With the housekeeping done, in terms of introducing myself, my name is Julien Haye. I'm a risk advisor. I'm a trustee and a non-executive director. I'm a former trader. I tend to say I was paid to take risks, although a different type of risk. I'm also a risk executive. I'm the author of The Risk Within that you can see here. And my work really focuses primarily on helping leaders and boards to deal with the strategic aspect of risk management, including culture. And the book, The Risk Within, is really the outcome of the close to 26 years I spent in financial services, where during that time I spent a lot of time, especially on risk remediation and risk transformation. And it always struck me to see how much money was spent by the organization I used to work for, and so little return we got based on the money we put on the table. And it's only when I came through the notion of psychological safety that I realized it kind of clicked. I realized that we spend a lot of time on building capabilities, on the 3 lines of defense, on policies, on system and tools. But the cultural aspect, especially the ability of people to make use of those systems, was not covered enough in my view. And that explains a lot of the problem we've seen. And I mean, Credit Suisse is a perfect example of that, where the risk system actually were working fine when Archegos happened, but people in the organization didn't feel they could actually talk through and escalate the issues that were building up in the books. And as a result, the company lost $5 billion on that name only. And that was just a series of events that really pointed to a problem from a cultural standpoint, where psychological safety especially was front and center. And in my work, this is something I'm seeing quite a lot, either in a positive way, by the way, or in a less positive way. But what it translates into is to problems for organizations that do not really align the culture to enable people to make use of the risk capabilities they have and to escalate when things are not working the way they should. So today we are going to focus on two aspects of that are covered in the book in chapter 4 and chapter 8. In fact, I just took the book with me just here. I don't know if you can see. I will come back to two principles which for me are cornerstone in making risk management work. One is it's about empowering individuals and teams to take risks. As I mentioned, I was an ex-trader. I was paid to take risk. That was part of the job. And the entire infrastructure was there to support the risk-taking aspect within boundaries, within limits, etc. But risk-taking was primarily driven from a psychological safety infrastructure that enabled it. And so organizations that prioritize psychological safety empower individuals and teams to take risks and pursue context identification of risk. Sorry, that's on the right page. To take risk and to innovate and really focus on innovative ideas. In the book, if you read it, you're going to see that I mentioned the example of IDEO, which is a consultancy where they do a lot of design and innovation consulting. I love that organization. I think they have a fantastic mindset and a way of approaching problem solving and problem identification. And the core and the ethos is really around really driving innovation by risk-taking in a safe a way as possible. The other chapter, which we will cover a little bit in more details, is around chapter 8, cultivating supportive environment. Psychological safety in a speaker culture must be maintained. We talked in a previous event that psychological safety is actually a team attribute. It is not something you can push down. It is very much driven by leadership, which means that in the same organization, you could have very safe and empowered team next to pretty much the opposite. So you're very much dependent on the people for that. If you have people who invite challenge, who invite people to speak up, who invite dissent in a way, and to flush out conflict, you're going to have a very safe environment and you're going to have a supportive environment. If you have people doing the exact opposite, challenging you all the place when you actually come with some questions, try to get some insights, you're going to drive the exact opposite. And I'm seeing that quite a lot in my job. So principle 6, which is the other principle I'm going to cover today, is about psychological safety is built on the foundation of support and encouragement. Organizations that prioritize psychological safety provide individuals and teams with the resources, training, and support they need to manage risks effectively and recover from setback. One of the things I flag always to my clients and the organization I work with is when an issue occurs, the best thing leaders can do is not to say what happened, why do we have that problem again, etc. It should be about what do you need from us to actually help resolve that problem. Do we need to prioritize it now? If so, why? And how does that align to what the organization needs? So it's about enabling the resolution rather than trying to finger point to the problem itself. It is very subtle. I'm yet to see organization doing it properly. There is a tendency when problems occur, especially if that kind of perceived repeat problems, to really finger point to the organization or areas where the problem occurred. This is extremely detrimental for psychological safety, and it does the exact opposite of creating a safe environment and enabling bold decision and remediation. So with that, I'm going to ask you to do a little bit of work. I'm going to launch a first poll survey just to get your views. Hopefully you should see the first poll survey. Where does empowerment break down most often? And I actually run that survey as well on LinkedIn, so I'll try to compare notes with what you guys provide. So hopefully you can see the poll survey popping up on your screen. Two responses, 3. 2 more seconds, 2 more seconds. We have less people today, so it's give us a little bit less flavor. I'm going to share the results. So you all provided a slightly different view. So no decision authority, fear of blame, lack of trust in leadership. None of those responses are particularly surprising. When I've asked similar questions, and hopefully I can update my background to show you the stat. I'm going to stop sharing. So when I ask similar questions, actually that's not the right one. 41% of respondents on LinkedIn said that lessons from past events were always looked at from a lesson learned perspective and inform future decision. There is a QA. Hi, Martin. So fear of blame might be the most common for me. Lack of trust in leadership is the worst. Both happen. I completely agree with you. I think usually you see them in fact jointly together, right? They tend to happen. All of them feed from each other. What I haven't done yet is to see how they correlate and come together, but in my view, they clearly do. So that's this one up. And in 13% of respondents on LinkedIn said that they actually really informed the decision process going forward when something happens. I've seen situations where we had quite a number of events, a risk event occurring in certain part of the business for organization I worked for, and the same pattern happened year on year. And ultimately what it came down to is the business was fully aware of what the problems were. The only way to address the problems was to really invest on the underlying platform front to back. Strategic decision was made not to do that. The outcome was a never-ending series of problems with small patches that frankly probably made the situation worse. And so without really improvement on the ground. And the worst part of it for me was that despite the decision not to invest on the platform, management was still challenging the people on the ground as to why they were still facing such issues. So that comes a little bit with the blame aspect, i.e. you're not doing your job because the issues keep happening, leadership not empowering their team to actually fix the problem, and not recognizing the impact of the decision on the ground either. So perhaps if you have some thoughts you're willing to share a little bit through the Q&A. Who on the call I've seen decision escalate upward even when the data was unclear and you didn't know what should be happening. Have you faced this type of situation from your perspective? We'll see if we can cover that through the Q&A, if you have a view. And that builds also on another theme I've explored through the poll survey around decision making on what works best to empower people in making informed risk decision on the ground. And I can actually share some of the results here already. Here we go. When asked that question on LinkedIn, 46 respondents, I think it was about 150 respondents, said that shared decision was fundamental, and 37% said, again, the same thing that you guys responded before, a no-blame culture was paramount to enable the organization behind. So this aspect around how decisions, again, are being made, empowering people, and not having that fear that if something goes wrong, the organization is going to turn back on the people who made this decision. Clearly, it depends on what the problem is, obviously, to a point. Still, there need to be an ability to take some level of risks and recognize some problems are going to occur. That's an issue I'm seeing, again, a lot across the organization I work with. A primary example of that is when businesses decide to outsource a very strong component of their value chain. Decision is made on top of vendor. The vendor usually can't cater for everything, which means there is going to be some problems at some point. But when this problem occurs and people turn back to the decision that was made around why do we have so many problems, even though that was predictable. And instead of saying, well, we made a decision, we understood that it will come with some impacts for the business, we are managing it. Some of the issues we are saying were anticipated and will probably continue occurring to a point. Instead, they're trying to fix each problem at a time, which is very ineffective with a vendor. Usually it doesn't work, in fact, and is consuming a lot of energy across the organization and distracting from the bigger problems, in my view. So trust, from that perspective, is built through shared ownership and predictable behavior. The decision is owned jointly across the organization, and when no problem occurs, especially, people know they will be supported in resolving it or helped in prioritizing what's most important through the organization. And that trust is not built through price, it's built by enabling people. And that nuance is very important as well to make sure that risk-taking and innovation operates within the way it should. So I think like some of you, I know Martin, you certainly are, and other people on the call might be as well. I come from a regulated environment, working with, if you work with the regulators, and as I'm actually currently doing with a client, but also in a previous life, you have to deal with regulators that are asking you, why did we have that problem? How do we deal with them? Etc. It is quite important to understand that the ability of a team, the empowerment of the team is part of the resolution on there. And the ability to convey to the regulators that the team have the resources, the capabilities, the capacity, and also the alignment strategically to support remediation and run the business in the most effective way from financial stability, but also for the clients, is absolutely paramount. And trust is usually lost with the regulators where they observe increased level of problem that impact the client, potentially financial stability, and the inability of the organization to fall in line to really remediate those problems accordingly. For me, that stems to a large extent to some of the problem I just mentioned, with lack of trust, lack of accountability, a lack of empowerment of the team on the ground to fix the problem. So one of the poll survey I run, and again, I'm going to share the results with you. You can see the results behind me, by the way. That was one of the feedback from a previous participant who told me it would be useful to have the result on the screens so that you can review them. I'm trying to push myself from them up the other way. So what happens, especially when there is a problem, and the decision under pressure, in my experience, has a tendency to flush out certain behaviors, not necessarily the best, but the ability for leaders to actually enable and trust a team in making really tough decisions under high pressure 24% of the respondents said they always had that backing. 40% said they usually had that backing, and 36%, as you can see here, said that leadership backed them sometimes or rarely, which is another way that practically they don't. And that also creates a problem in terms of empowerment in the environment we're here today, because all organizations, you probably all face a level of high level of certainty, unpredictable environment, things that evolve very quickly, a lot of it completely outside of your control. And if the organization doesn't have that inbuilt resiliency to deal and pivot in this environment, if people on the ground do not feel empowered to actually make the right decision, and everything is centralized at the top, you cannot respond as an organization to very high pressure and crisis. And that, for me, the 36% is extremely concerning for this organization, because if they face a problem tomorrow, it is very likely they will amplify the problem, because the response is most likely going to be inadequate. So this is another way to look at what does that mean to empower people, and how does it translate in terms of decision making, especially in that very high pressure crisis mode environment. I'm just checking some of the aspects I had covered offline. Yes, so when I look back into those things, what it tells me is that people want clarity, and that's a point I cover in the book quite extensively. You cannot build psychological safety and trust if people have to constantly second guess how decisions are being made, and they don't feel empowered to make the decision on the ground for the perimeter they have to manage. And interestingly, that's one of the things I'm seeing in one of the organizations I'm working with today, where the ability of the first line to make decision on risks and controls and understand and empowering them in understanding what they need to focus on is simply not necessarily there. Backing, so making sure that people understand that if tough decision is being made, they will have the backing of their management. And finally, learning from issues and that lesson learned process is really, really critical. And the lesson learned poll, with 86% of people saying effectively that they learn from past mistake often or always, for me is a very strong and positive signal. It is not always easy to do that, by the way, having had to lead that in previous life, but it is paramount to enable the organization to evolve and also understand what to focus on and to drop if possible. So with that, I'm going to launch the next poll survey. I'm just going to take a little bit of a breather as well to get your views. Up. Hopefully you can see the next poll survey. So what will most strengthen accountability next month in your organization based on what we just discussed? Leadership backing, very clear on ownership, recognizing initiatives, or close feedback loops, especially with the lesson learned. Where do you see will get the most buck for your investment if you were to change something? One response. Two. Give you 5 more seconds. 3. Well, at least there's a complete consensus on the results, so I'm going to share that. You all said leadership backing. Again, I think that the tone from the top and what I've observed either in my career or in my advisory work really aligns to that. People walking the talk, and especially people at the top, really opening and enabling those discussions, however uncomfortable that can be, is paramount. So what I'd love to do, if you guys have the appetite for that and are interested, is just to see how you could evolve that over the next 2 to 3 weeks. Say that in preparation to Christmas, that's one of your things you're going to do across your organization. How will you try to drive that outcome? Either as a leader or turning back to the people you're working for, and see how you could invite them to really push that backing, and how can you drive the risk function to be part of that solution as well, which for me, from a risk culture perspective, is absolutely paramount. The way the risk organization structure itself and then drive a risk-aware, risk culture, psychologically safe environment is absolutely paramount. And I'm saying that because looking back at some of the things I've done in my career, sometimes I've actually drove the opposite behavior, not knowingly. But it's clear that the way certain framework and risk frameworks operated drove the exact opposite of what we just talked about. And whether it's through risk event, RCSAs, etc., risk appetite is a case in point I cover at length in the book, because a lot of the time it is not centered to the right decision process, which I keep seeing on an advisory side. So all of those aspects for me are absolutely fundamental, and I'd love to see what you could do on your side to drive better decision making and a better outcome across your organization by really empowering your team, but also delivering from a risk management standpoint the toolkit that really foster those decision points. So with that, we are almost out of time, and I will leave you with 3 takeaways. Trust is paramount to make risk management work, and that's how signals surfaces, whether it's for emerging risk, perhaps problems, more cultural problems as well, like fraud, etc. The way leadership behaves really shape the response of the organization to the situation, especially under pressure, under crisis management, and really empowering teams mean that when the signals are surfacing, you're giving the permission to your team to respond to them. And that is paramount, again, to drive resiliency, but also innovation and growth. So with that, I wish you all a very good rest of your day. And I hope to continue speaking to you either on LinkedIn or in person. Have a good day all, and don't forget to complete the survey if you have time when I close that call. Speak to you guys soon. Bye-bye.